Welcome to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. Cig Neutron is a creature designer, special effects makeup artist, and a creative force of nature. Cig has done effects work on multiple movies, including Tron Legacy, Suckerpunch, and Star Trek Discovery, and was on Face Off Season 7, and then again on Season 11 as one of the Face Off All-Stars. Nowadays, Cig and his partner in crime, Rani, are putting out a lot of their own original content, and the volume of stuff that they put out is pretty amazing. Everything from music videos to skits and pinup photo shoots, all of which are driven by practical effects makeup. Cig is also one of those really unique effects artists who has a very strong signature style, and you can easily spot his work, which has a very fun sensibility that combines monsters with sleaze and naughtiness, along with a strong influence from gross-out cartoons from the 90s, all of which feels like it's part of this very unique universe that Cig has created. I don't know, I just love his work. It reminds me of all of the stuff that I used to love as a kid, and it just makes me happy. Seriously, all of you listening, do yourselves a favor and check Cig's work out. His videos, his Instagram page, all of it. It's awesome. Cig also hosts a podcast that I really enjoy called Cig Neutron Sputron, available everywhere you listen, and he does a pretty cool series of live streams on Twitch where he breaks down his effects techniques. We had a pretty wide-ranging conversation, and we got into everything from creativity to practical effects, and we explored spirituality in quite some depth as well. Cig has a very well-developed and fascinating spiritual sensibility, and there's a lot to learn from him. I always love talking to him, and I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Here, without further ado, is the one, the only, Cig Neutron. Cig Neutron, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, all things considered.
That's good. That's good. So, big fan of your work and your podcast, and really, really like your thoughts on creativity. It's definitely very inspirational, a lot of really actionable stuff here. So, from a creative perspective, as a creator yourself, what has this time period been like for you? I think we're on something like day 30, maybe even more of COVID era quarantining. How has this time been for you as a creative?
Well, it's interesting because last year we had this crazy spiritual awakening, I guess you could call it. I mean, I feel like the term spiritual is too loaded and it gives people the wrong idea. I'm not talking like religion or any kind of dogma or anything. It's just like more of an awakening to all of the things going on behind the scenes that most people don't believe in. And that led me down a path of like quantum physics, studying all kinds of theologies and religions. And Rani, who I'm quarantined with, she began to like channel like messages, and she realized like she's like a spirit diviner. She does bone divination now, and all of these things, like you could call it spirit or the unseen or whatever, they were kind of like guiding us through last year, and it helped me get sober and basically like totally get my life on track. And then they guided me towards alchemy. So I started reading about alchemy, and it's the process of, a lot of people think it's just turning lead into gold, but really it's about taking all of this material and then extracting each of the best parts of it through each stage. And to do that, the first stage is called the negretto phase, and it's the black phase where everything has to like rot and putrefy, and then you have to extract the best essence from that. This is, I guess, a really long-winded explanation to say that I kind of like started learning about this process, and it's a universal process in nature. And now I'm realizing that they woke me up to all of these ideas so that I could in turn be ready to experience this collective alchemical transformation of humanity. And I think that because before this, I was talking at length on my podcast about, man, it's like, how can anybody sort of better themselves, and how can we develop culture when nobody has any time?
Right.
Our entire system is made on slaving away for the almighty dollar, the imaginary idea of concept of money. But really, it's actually freedom that we're all slaving away for. The money is just the name for it in the system of control. But I think it's kind of amazing because now the world has essentially like put on pause, and now everybody has that, we're like all in our own little spaces, and we have nothing to do but like self-introspection and try to rethink our priorities in the world. Because our priorities, I mean, I think most of us can agree that like the human race, our priorities are a little bit screwed up. You know?
Yeah. Now they have been for a while.
Yeah. So it's like, I think that, so this time it's like, I see all of my friends that do art and stuff, they're branching out in different ways, like doing digital drag shows. And we're just like cranking out videos that we're shooting. And it's kind of fun because we have to be creative in the ways that we produce content, because it's just me and Rani and our dog here. So it's like, I'm shooting videos where I play like all the characters, and it's fun. It's like it's another layer of like a fun, I don't know, a fun restriction, I guess, that forces you to be more creative.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way. You can also look at it like it's terrible, but I mean, everything is a matter of perception, and if you can choose the way that you perceive things, then why not choose to perceive things in a more positive way?
And I've heard from a lot of directors that it's the constraints, whether they be budgetary constraints or time constraints or resource constraints. It's those constraints that end up pushing you to be more resourceful and therefore more creative. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I've been following this stuff that you've been putting out. The Augie videos are pretty hilarious. The Joe Necrotic thing was awesome. I knew when you focused on the very initial shot when he takes his hat off, for a second I was like, he's totally going to like peel skin off of his head. Totally saw it happen. But yeah, you seem to put out stuff really, really fast. I mean, you just strike me as a kind of relentless creator. I mean, can you talk about your creative process? I mean, I've heard you say a lot of really interesting things just about the notion of creativity. But for you, what is your kind of day-to-day content output process like? And to feel like I'm putting it in very technical terms, but how are you able to put out as much as you do?
Yeah. Well, I put it this way, as that I kind of underplan things so that I don't overthink them. I think that a lot of times we creatively overthink things when we're comparing it to something else.
Right.
Like, it's like if you have an idea, you're the only person in the whole world that's had that idea. There may be variations of the idea, but you're the only one that's going to do it exactly how you're going to do it.
Right.
So you might as well just do it. And I think that's where the creative good stuff comes from. It's the first stuff to come out. And then we end up like diluting it and trying to change it and trying to like second guess ourselves, when really just go for it, and it is what it is. And then I always say you could spend your entire life creating one masterpiece, or you can spend your entire life making an amazing body of diverse work that just tells your story,
Yeah, no, I think there's something huge to that. Clive Barker says, vomit out the first draft of everything. Force yourself to get the first version of everything out as fast as possible, to not overthink it, because that is indicative of the purest part of the idea. Because the more you think about it and the more you redo it, the more it gets watered down, the less true it is to the original, conception of the idea, for sure.
And it's funny that you kind of like put it that way too. It's like, again, I guess that sort of ties back into the alchemical process. It's like you throw out this like materia, and then it's all there, and then you can go back and refine it. But you have to have like the material there to refine, and then I think just getting that material out sometimes is what stops a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated about this idea of alchemy that you're talking about. How does that manifest itself in like a daily practice for you, or does it?
The first phase of like alchemy, like I said, the Negretto, is a lot about like facing the shadow, and it's embracing those parts of ourselves. And because basically it's a lot of self-examination, and I do like a lot of thinking day to day, and it actually like really like it helps my creative process too, because like when I start pondering the nature of my own existence, then I started pondering the nature of creativity, and where do ideas come from, and why do I do what I do. And, it's a lot, alchemy is a lot of like work with your shadow. And basically we tend to make the assumption that our personality is us, our true self, but really our personality is just the parts of ourselves that we've edited and we show the world. And then we hide all these other parts that are like, they think are weird or not socially acceptable. And then those start to fester under the surface because they're not acknowledged, and they're not, utilized in a healthy way. So then they start manifesting in depression or anxieties or fears. So I dig into all that stuff, and I embrace that stuff, and I embrace my flaws, and I use that as I transmute it into creative ideas. And like, it's like most of my creatures, they have like substance abuse problems. And, and like I had for probably like 7 years, I had like a huge drinking problem. And, but it was like, rather than like get down on myself for having a drinking problem, I just use that as fuel to transmit, because I know other people like are in the same boat, and it comes back to a matter of perception. I could look at those 7 years and think that I've wasted my life, or I could look at those 7 years and think that I learned a lot about what it's like to go down that path, and now I can use that to fuel my creativity.
Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the things I love about just observing your work online is you have such a well-defined universe of characters, and it seems like it has its own laws of physics and stuff. But it's everything. Your signature aesthetic is so recognizable. It's really, really cool. I mean, I'll one day would love to see you have some sort of Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of show, like Cig Neutron's Sputron Playhouse, or however that manifests. But it's so clear that you have such a well-defined universe that you've created with characters and laws of physics and nature and stuff like that. How did that all come about? I mean, how did you develop your signature aesthetic, and how did that turn into this universe that you've built and continue to build?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks, man. That means a lot to me. It's like it was. I think I think a lot of people, once they discover their style, that's when, like, I think that's like probably one of the hardest parts is being an artist, because you want to be original and you want to like push something, but then it also feels like you're forcing yourself to be original.
Right.
But I think that for me, it was just, I just had to find the things that resonated with me as a human being. And those happen to be substance abuse problems and drugs and alcohol and sleazy, gross, like Ren and Stimpy, gross, like extreme close-up type visuals. So, and then my real name is Brandon Dishman, and I didn't really want to be known as the artist Brandon Dishman. Like, I wanted some like weird sleazy sci-fi name. And Cig Neutron just sort of came out of nowhere. And then it's weird because this is like a way long time ago, before I was ever into alchemy or anything, or like shadow work or anything like that. And I created the Cig Neutron character. He was basically my shadow, the antithesis of me. It was all the bad parts. It was like Cig Neutron was this character that traveled the universe, and he was trying to be the baddest of the bad guy in the universe. So in turn, he sort of acted like the anti-hero, because he was traveling the universe and taking the heads of the most evil beings around the galaxy. And then that was sort of my starting point. And then there I just started fleshing it out with all of these like weird creatures and strange, strange things that, that inhabit the universe. And then I met Rani, and then we made Bizarro a Go-Go.
Right.
And she brought like the pinup, sexy, weird vibe. And then her brain also thinks of all kinds of weird things. So then we started diving into like advertising and strange products. So, and then it's all sort of like naturally unfolded into this like strange world that, and now it's like, now that I believe in like reincarnation and stuff, like I'm wondering like if I'm like, I think maybe we tell stories about things that we've experienced on other planets or in the past. Like I'm actually like, I have this theory, I call it a reverentism. It's my philosophy, because it combines all sorts of weird, like all kinds of like elements of Christianity, Buddhism, like all Satanism, like all this stuff into like one cohesive, open-minded philosophy. And I think that I firmly believe that I don't firmly believe anything, actually. That's the whole point, is that I think that space travel, the way we do it, is through the spirit realm. So so our bodies are actually physical spacesuits, and our minds are infinite and cosmic, and we can travel to stars. But if we want to anchor ourselves into space-time, we incarnate in a body. And I think that we pull some of this stuff from our infinite cosmic minds, and when we regurgitate it on whatever planet we're at, and we tell us, because where do ideas come from, honestly? It's like I talk to all of my artist friends, and they have the craziest, weirdest ideas, and like half of like David Lynch and things like they say that they don't even know if they can claim their ideas as their own, because it feels like they just come from somewhere else to you, and it's like, where is that?
No, I totally believe that too. I mean, I've had moments where these ideas have just hit me in writing or anything else, and I literally can't claim it. It's like, where did that come from? And I think there is something to the idea of being a open vessel for whatever spirit or muse or whatever you want to call it, to send you those ideas, because I think they're there. Yeah. David in David Lynch's meditation book, he talks about how ideas are just big fish floating around, and if you're open to it, you can catch them, but they're not really yours. That's like the idea, and I think the whole idea is to get yourself out of the way, take yourself out of the equation, so you can be receptive to these ideas wherever they're coming from, for sure.
Yeah. And if you further dissect that idea, it's like, it's, you start digging into quantum physics and it's like, we're here, but we're not here. There's like superposition and quantum entanglement and like all of these, like everything is and isn't at the same time, which is like, it's these weird concepts to wrap your head around. But if you, when I started forcing myself to try to understand these things, then a lot of the things about the world start to make sense. Like we're living in a world that feels so crazy and weird and dumb, but it's only because like we don't understand it, and a lot of people don't work towards an understanding of our own existence because society has taught us that this is the way it is. You're just a meat bag that's going to die and that's it. And it's like, and then nobody questions it any further than that. And then they wonder why everyone's so unhappy. It's like,
well, what put you on your spiritual path to arriving at irreverentism and the beliefs that you have and the experiences that you've had? How did that? What was that path for you like?
Yeah, so it was actually last year, January of last year, we went to New Orleans of all places, and it's funny because I was filming for a joke docuseries I was going to do about trying to start a cult. And I decided, okay, I guess since I'm going to New Orleans, now's the time to start it. So I was talking to this dude on the plane, and like I'm filming everybody, and I'm just like again, it was like one of these ideas that came from nowhere, and the whole idea of the cult was like human interaction, like genuine human interaction and connectivity and things like that. And I would ask people if they want to join my cult, but then I'm filming for that, and then Rani just decides we leave this drag show one night, and then this lady pulls up on a bike, and then Rani immediately walks up to this lady and just starts having this intense conversation with her, and then they just start both crying, and then she's like hugging her, and she's like, "It's okay, child, I'm gonna make it all better." And then me and this lady's friend, we're like outside of this, and we're like, "What is happening here?" And we're like, something really intense is happening right now, but we're all strangers. And then so I asked the lady, and she's like, well, her mom just passed away last night. And like somehow like Rani picked up on that.
Whoa.
And then they had this like really deep like conversation about it. And then from that night on, like Rani started channeling. We basically had like spiritual tour guides around New Orleans. Like she had knowledge of the city that there's no way that she could have had. And we were tied. So then I start filming her because obviously, okay, this is really interesting and I'm already filming. So then the docu-series shifts to that. And then, so I start documenting Rani's like awakening and then channeling these spirits, and then all these crazy synchronicities start happening, like undeniable, like weird, crazy synchronicities. And then we come back home thinking that, they were just spirits of New Orleans, but then they weren't. And then they're like, it develops into, they're not just spirits, they're universal archetypal energies. And then they start showing us how to like energetically clean the house. And then that's when they got sober. And then it's like, so then I'm still documenting all this stuff, and I have all this footage that's waiting, and I'm going to put it into a docuseries called Black Tea and Bourbon.
Oh my gosh.
Which, and it's like, I have no doubt, because I see the way that they help influence events. Like I call it the unseen. And they were having me film. They were giving me the idea to film because this amazing life-changing event was about to happen, and I was going to document it, and then I was going to share it with the world in the form of a docuseries. So that's like where it all started. I'd always been interested in, how the world works and magic and things, but I don't know, the world told me it didn't exist, and I just kind of believed that for some reason until I was smacked like right in the face with proof to me. I always say it's like, I can tell you my stories, but I don't expect you to believe it, because you're only going to believe it when it happens to you. Because when it happens to you, it'll be so profound and undeniable that you'll believe. But I can't do that for you. It's something that everybody has to find on their own,
Yeah. So that trip to New Orleans was originally going to be, it sounds like something along the lines of a found footage kind of documentary style film, but then these events just started taking place. Had Rani ever had experiences like that? Has she channeled spirits in the past? Would that make her a medium?
Yeah, I guess so. The medium, you call them channels. It's we honestly, because we just got thrown in this, we don't even know what to call ourselves. We're just I don't know.
This all just happened. It all just
So,
wow.
I mean, in the past, she had like, it's funny because like I thought about it the other day. It's like we would be out like drinking or something, and then she would just like tell somebody something that was like so profoundly personal to them that there'd be no way that she knew that. And then it would like totally like freaked them out. And then I was like, I would always brush it off. I was like, it's okay. Randy gets like weirdly psychic sometimes. Don't worry about it. And it's like, and we just thought it was a joke too. We're we were kind of, it's like we believed that something was going on, but like, I don't know, it never became such a big, profound deal that like, we like it did until we went to New Orleans. And, we had played around with like Ouija boards and things like that. And we definitely believed that the Ouija boards were working because we had a bunch of crazy experiences with that like many years ago.
I always heard those were a no-no.
Yeah. I think the more I'm learning about this stuff, the less scary paranormal stuff seems and the more just practical it seems. Like I feel like there is, in Hermetic principles, there's like as above, so below. And in the spirit realm, I believe it's just like our realm. There's a hierarchy of beings, and they're like, if things that are like that you think are demons or scary ghosts are like fucking with you, they're usually just like lower vibrational beings that the only way that they can mess with you is to scare you and make you think that they're all these like powerful demon and they have sway over your lives. But usually it's it's like lower vibe, like trickster energies,
right?
Just trying to get there,
like the spiritual or the kind of ectoplasmic equivalent of somebody cutting you off in traffic.
Yeah.
They don't really have any power, but they just like to fuck with you, so to speak.
Yeah, they can like influence just enough to scare you into a thing. And it's weird because I'm learning that a lot of these energies really have effects on people's moods too. So I think that if people could start opening themselves up to the idea that there is a unseen realm at work here, then they can learn how to actually navigate that better. Because right now, a lot of people are just living subconsciously.
Right.
They're just sort of floating through life. And, and this goes like, that's why irreverentism, I say that spirituality is practicality. So when you're subconsciously floating through life, whether on a spiritual sense or not, you're subject to the forces of whoever's trying to sway you, like on a spiritual realm and also in a physical realm, like, for instance, the government or society or something. You're just like, you're at the whim of outside forces.
Right.
But when you become like, bring your mind and your consciousness to be more present and more mindful, then you start living consciously and you make conscious decisions and you're not so much swayed by outside forces. So you become more of your true self in a sense,
Right. No, I think that makes all the sense in the world because I think it's so easy to live by your subconscious. And your subconscious is just the kind of psychological effect of everything that's ever happened to you ever. So if that's the case, you're constantly just regressing and you're constantly just rehashing things that have already happened and preconceived notions of yourself. And then there's no room for any sort of growth or healing or anything new. It's just like this and I see people in these cycles, so to speak. I think it's most people, unfortunately.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza does a really good job of explaining it. He's like a neuroscientist.
I'm a huge fan.
Oh, yeah?
Huge.
Okay,
yeah. I haven't gone to one of his retreats yet, but I want to.
Yeah, it's like, I love that because this is what like my goal too, is like, I'm trying to, he focuses more on the practical end and he's like, here's the neuroscience behind it. But also you could tell he's kind of spiritual too, but he doesn't like really, it's all about how you skin things in words. And that's why I'm trying to like break down this like stigma of spirituality and realize that it's just like a deeper understanding of how your mind and your brain and your consciousness work, And he puts it really great. And it's, that people get stuck in these cycles of thinking and feeling. And, the same experiences lead to the same emotions and the same emotions lead to the same experiences. So if you're in this cycle, then you have to do something that literally breaks your entire cycle. And that's why I think it's so beautiful that the world right now is literally breaking everyone's cycle.
Right.
And I know there is shitty, terrible things happening with death and stuff like that. But, but also we have to acknowledge that and honor that. But also we have to, because I see people post things like, oh, all you guys saying that this is for a reason and this is like good things are going to come from this. And it's like, okay. Or we could all just like wallow in despair and anxiety. And you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you have to look at the positive at some point, or you can live in the negative. That's fine. It's totally, you are in charge of your own experience.
Yeah.
I literally just watched a documentary called Maybe Logic last night about Robert Anton Wilson. And oh my God, that guy's a genius, man. And he's like, He says that we use the word is way too much because, like I said earlier, everything is and isn't, even on a quantum level. And if everybody just acknowledged that we're all cosmic schmucks, the more we acknowledge that, And the more we say that, and the more we realize, the less we begin to act like cosmic schmucks. Because when you insist that you know something, that's when you, like, usually you make bad decisions. If you just accept that you don't know anything, then it's a liberating experience that you can just float in this wonderful, weird existence of like no absolutes, you know?
Cosmic Schmucks. I feel like that's the name of your book on irreverentism.
Totally. Yeah. It's crazy because like I didn't even know about this guy. And my friend Chet Zar actually sent me the link.
Oh,
and,
nice. I know Chet. I don't know him personally. I know his work though.
Oh, he's awesome. But this guy, Robert Anton Wilson, also started, or I don't know if he started, I'm still looking into it, but Discordianism, where it basically says that chaos is just as divine and important to the universe as order. Because like a lot of New Age thought is all about love and light and, you know, order and harmony, but disharmony is just as an important part of the cosmic whole. And that's what Discordianism is about. And I'm like, oh my God, it's almost like irreverentism. So
right.
It's exciting to think so far down a path and then discover somebody else who is already playing in that realm of thought.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like without chaos, you don't have any sort of appreciation for order and people who bring order and people who bring value. If you don't have some semblance of, everything for me always goes back to Star Wars eventually, but it's like the
totally.
light side of the dark and the balance between the dark side and the light and the way of the Force and stuff like that.
As Greg Braden puts it, like consciousness informs itself. So these stories that we tell ourselves, Star Wars, why do you think that resonates so hard with so many people? It's because I think they feel the deeper cosmic truths of it.
Totally.
You know, there is the Force, there's the light and the dark, and they spin it in a way that the dark isn't necessarily evil. The dark has its agenda, and the light has its agenda. You know, but then there's the what do you call it, the Imperials or whatever. You know, they're taking out like
the Empire.
Yeah,
they would be Imperials. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, but they're not necessarily linked to the dark side, but, you know, there's dark sides manipulating it. And you could totally like liken those concepts to the world that we're living in. You know, it's like I say that like I don't know. I think it's great. And I think that's if you're these cosmic beings that couldn't also, I believe that there's like Star Trek is telling us like these minds that are trying to help civilizations and planets around the universe develop. You can't interfere directly, because that would screw up their, you know, development. I think it's the prime directive, they call it in Star Trek. You can't, you know. And so I think that what better, more genius way to do that is if we were if we say that you and I or something were actually like, our mind began on a different planet that grew up with a different society and a set of rules and like knew these things. And then if we wanted to help another planet, rather than go there in a spaceship, what if we went there and fully immersed ourselves so that there was a temporary blocker on our memory as we slowly like developed and progressed. And then that's where these ideas come from, is because those were the ideas we were supposed to bring to this planet. But since we're just as lost as everybody else, it's not necessarily cheating, because we're not coming at it from a place of so far advanced. We're coming at it from a place from we were advanced, but we have to remember that we were advanced to help raise the collective vibration of a planet and thus its development of its civilization.
Yeah.
It's pretty deep stuff, man. It's like I could talk about this stuff like all day long, man.
No, but I've gone down certain roads and had certain experiences, and traveled in interesting ways where I hear what you're saying, and it resonates with me in a big way, and DMT helps.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, it's. I think that psychedelics are. They're the fast track way to raise your vibrations and your consciousness to higher levels. What's funny is that everybody just assumes that, it's a drug. It just messes with the chemicals in your brain, and that's why you see the things. But actually, there's not really even that much like research on psychedelics to prove definitively that you're not actually seeing what you're seeing, right. And your mind isn't going anywhere. And so it's like I think that I think that we can get to those places without substances. But I think that those substances are important because it shows people that there's more. Mm-hmm. And that's why the government, they don't want you. They want you kept in the matrix of you're a meat bag and that's all you are. But it's like anyone that has a mystical psychedelic experience, that alone, like whether they believe in God or whatever, that's what it's one of those things I was saying is like when it happens to you, it's so profound and you know it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like those are the kind of experiences that people need, but then drugs are demonized and but it's like, sure, anything can be bad in like overusing it and abusing it, but they're medicines to show us that there is more.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think it's beautifully put, because I think it does show you that there are other dimensions and there's other levels of consciousness that humans are capable of. But the idea of there's other ways to arrive at this without taking something, I think is huge. But that argument drives me crazy when you hear people saying, oh, no, you didn't have this unbelievably cosmic, euphoric, insanely united experience with cosmic, eternal, endless, timeless forces. You were just hallucinating because you were high. I've never heard anybody who's done DMT say that. That's the thing. It's always the people who have never done it before who are the first ones to, oh, you were just high, chalk it up to something like that. But no, I think it is the next big revolution in consciousness around the corner. And it's around the corner. I think they're seeing what ayahuasca does to people in terms of overall consciousness raising. Other things like ibogaine are really helping people in huge ways get over addiction issues. I think these things are, I think it's around the corner, but I think you're right, is a lot of governments probably don't want people to know about this because you get too smart. You understand too much about the nature of things. And I think keeping these medicines away from people is without a doubt a form of oppression, but I feel like the gates are starting to break open. I feel like with the advent of these retreats that there seems to be more and more of, with everything from DMT to mushroom retreats and in certain cases ibogaine retreats, it's happening. It's happening little by little.
I've seen some articles that the FDA is starting to approve like microdosing and things like that for depression and PTSD, and it's if we would just loosen up these restrictions, that's the whole thing. It's like there's some element on this planet that is in a position of power that is trying to keep humanity from its potential. I don't know what it is. You could call it the Illuminati or the cabal or whatever. But there's obviously something here because all systems are set up to oppress the idea that we have unlimited potential. And I don't know what that is. And it's like, I kind of go crazy sometimes, like thinking about it, but I think with this pandemic and everything, you're seeing that those power structures crumble, and that's going to break way to a new, more compassionate, more connected world, Yeah,
I do think that's the beauty of this time period, regardless of, there's horrendous things happening. I don't mean to downplay that at all or say that this is overall a positive thing. But I think it is important to look for the silver linings. And there's people who are having this unprecedented amounts of time with family and their children, and they're able to connect with themselves. And I'm getting a lot of creative work done. So I think if you look for the silver lining, it's definitely there. But I think the world just needed a break. As you'd said before, we're constantly just going way too fast, way too often, every single day. And I think this was a cultural shift that needed to happen on a certain level. But going back to the idea of realizing your human's infinite potential and the fact that there is somebody oppressing us from realizing that, I think it goes back to Star Wars once again, the light and the dark. And I feel like if you have to fight for the liberation of your own consciousness, you really, really appreciate it in a big way.
Yep. And I think that's what people don't realize the importance of artists, but I think that's what we do as artists and as creators, is that we show people the magic of being able to manipulate ideas and stories and sounds and foods. It's like any kind of creator, any kind of you curate an experience of any kind for someone else. You're showing people how to manipulate the world that we're in, and that gives people hope. And that inspires people that there is more to life to live than just to live to exist, which is what our entire society is set up on right now. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping that this accomplishes, that system falls, because man, it's just, there's so much out there that's so rewarding and so amazing about the world. And, I realized that was part of what sent me into like drinking for 7 years straight. It was just that I was like, is this it? Like there's no magic here. There's no nothing, but but there is. It's just the system is set up to convince you that it's not.
Right. No, I mean you have to seek in the right way, or if you're lucky, it sounds like it was the case for you to a certain degree in New Orleans. It'll tap you on the shoulder.
Yeah, I think a lot more people are going to start seeing that happen if you just start paying attention. I always tell everybody, if you want to know, just be open to the idea that you have a team of like spiritual like advisors and people and guiding you through life, and just start talking to them and be open and like ask for guidance, ask for a sign or something, and then actually believe that it's possible. And then after that, just pay attention. Don't expect it immediately. But just know that you asked, and then know that you're going to get your answer in some shape or form. And it's going to come in the form of a coincidence that is like, okay, really? Is that really a coincidence? I don't know. And then after, you'll have more and more coincidences. And then at some point you'll have to stop believing it's all coincidence. And it's just, okay, there is something more going on here.
All right. I'm going to do that. Totally going to do that. I'm trying it. Cool.
Let me know what happens.
I will. So, in looking, your work reminds me of my childhood in a huge way. I just see so many different traces of all the stuff I was into as this kind of nerdy horror kid. A little bit of Beetlejuice the cartoon. There's some Ren and Stimpy in there. I haven't heard the word spew since I'd read like Cracked magazine way back in the day. I mean, you bring up so much nostalgically. What as a child, what were you on a steady diet of as far as movies, cartoons, music influences? Because I mean, obviously, I would imagine your aesthetic really kind of comes from your childhood, right?
Yeah, it's like cult horror films. My mom was like really cool to let me like watch all kinds of crazy stuff as a kid. And yeah, all of these like weird obscure cartoons like Ren and Stimpy. It was like Mutant League, just anything. For some reason, I just really liked snotty, gross, like, like Ren and Stimpy type, like something about that, man. Like those panels that were drawn, and also like Mad Magazine.
Yeah, me too.
And the wacky packages. Do you remember those?
It sounds so familiar.
They were, I think they were put out by Topps, but it was like kind of like in compared with Garbage Pail Kids. Right. It was like you would have, instead of Domino's pizza, you'd have Donkey Nose pizza, and then like Donkey would just be snotting on his pizza. Okay, yeah, I did have that. And it was just all of these like gross products, and something about the gross aesthetic just, man, like spoke to me. And then I had films like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and it is things that I call it the cartoony realism that the Kyoto brothers brought. And it was very big in the 80s. It was like exaggerated creatures that were goofy proportions, but then they skinned them in weird, like realistic ways. Right. And it like Freaked. One of my another faves. Example. Yeah. And what's crazy is like that whole aesthetic of Freaked is what I'm talking like that. I think that movie encompasses it like to a T. But I actually didn't see that until like a couple of years ago as an adult, and after I had already developed the Cig Neutron style. And I was like, oh my God. And then, it's funny because, that was another influence. Big Daddy Roth was huge to me as a kid. I would like put together the models because my brother was a car guy and I didn't care about the cars, but I saw Big Daddy Roth and I was like, wait, monsters in cars? Okay.
Count me in.
Yeah. And then I was at the Freak screening not too long ago, and then they were talking about, that was totally the inspiration for their creatures towards the end was the Big Daddy Roth. And I was like, oh, yeah, totally saw that. So it's like there's all these like weird style notes that just resonate with me somehow. And it makes me really happy that I exude that and it resonates with you in that way. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I really, really, really enjoy your work a lot. And I feel like tracing who you were as a child and what you were into as a kid is a huge part of who you should be as an adult, Yeah.
Liquid Television. That was another huge influence.
I don't know if I ever saw that. What was that?
Well, it was like that little block of like TV that we had to sneak up and stay up late. There was like Aeon Flux.
Yes. It was on. I loved the Max. The Max was super cool. I had a VHS of it, and it's like the whole movie's 3 hours long. They pieced all the episodes together. Nice. Then
there was The Head. That was my favorite. It was like this guy that just had this huge head, and this like purple demon lived in his head.
I remember that. I vaguely remember. I think I have to Google it.
Like weird, like totally irreverent, absurdist surrealism, I guess, is just like so me, and then who would have known that now it's like that's filtering into my philosophy on life. It's just absurdist, irreverent,
Yeah. I feel like we don't have there was a lot of that stuff when I was a kid, and I guess when you were a kid too, where there was I don't know what to call it. It was a time when I feel like there's nothing like Ren and Stimpy now at all, because I think kids would either be too scared of it or it would be considered as too explicit for kids. But watching it now, I watched it recently, not only does it hold up, but you're like, holy shit, this is not for kids. All sorts of weird sexual innuendo between the two of them. And the gross out stuff is like really, it's still gross as an adult to this day. It was so ahead of its time, but not because you couldn't do that now. I feel like there isn't this stuff that's no holds barred level for kids anymore, which is sad.
Well, yeah, I think it's weird because with the whole Bizarro Go-Go show and everything like that, and also I have a bunch of different stories that I want to try to do. It was like animated and stuff, but like I'm seeing a lot of really interesting, really racy, pushing the limits content that's coming out from Netflix now. It's like they've finally like you got like Big Mouth, which was that I don't know if you've ever watched that, but it's like they really they take that to some places, Yeah. So it's like I'm gonna try to put together some pitches to Netflix and see if I can't get something that is very nostalgic to us, like 90s kids, and that gross absurdist kid humor, but not really kids.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be huge. I mean, just observing how big Stranger Things arguably was launched by people's love for 80s nostalgia. But for the 90s kids, there was that really, really specific time period where you had stuff like the Beetlejuice cartoon and Gravedale High and all this absurdist kind of insane horror stuff. And I grew and Mad Balls and Garbage Pail Kids.
Mad Balls. Yeah. There's just like you start going down the rabbit hole, and then you can totally see the ties that bind that entire aesthetic. There needs to be a name for that, like 90s gross out kid aesthetic.
I was trying to come up with it. I was like, I thought there has to be a name for it. I couldn't think of it though. But there's a few pop surrealist artists who do a great job at doing paintings that kind of bring back that aesthetic. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it's a book of pop surrealist art. I'll figure it out. I'll send you a link. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
no, but I missed that time period, and I feel like now 90s kids are adult and making films and making stuff. I haven't seen somebody do anything that, other than the work that you're doing, but I haven't seen anybody put out like a feature film that has that look or feel to it. I don't even see the cartoons with that style anymore. It makes me a little sad, but I think it's right around the corner. So I love the idea that you're pitching something to Netflix. That's super cool. So are you still doing effects on movies and TV nowadays, or are you mostly focusing on your own stuff?
Yeah, well, mostly I focus on my own stuff, but I freelance, so I'm open anytime. Like jobs just like come to me. I do a lot of like commercial work and stuff, but now it's like work is completely non-existent. So I'm just trying to really focus on our stuff. So
yeah. And you went to the Savini School, right?
Yep.
Very cool. So how was that in terms of learning how to be an effects artist, so to speak? There's technique where you learn, here's how you sculpt, here's how you live cast, here's how you paint, and like that. But then there's this intangible sense of developing your own style and aesthetic and kind of finding the spirit of the creations that you create. What was your process for finding that part of the art? Beyond just the technique, beyond being a good sculptor, painter, life caster, what was the learning process for really being an artist, so to speak?
It's weird because like ever since I can remember, like I was a kid, I just drew monsters all the time. Like that was undoubtedly, I just wanted to live in a world of monsters, so it just felt like a natural ability to see these things in my head. So it's like I really have no explanation for where that part came from. But then, so that's my baseline, loving monsters, always drawing them. And then I start to be influenced by life experience and things. And then like even now it's happening, like our art is reflecting quarantine and stuff. So it's like, right. I think you have to let your life experience flow into your art. And because like you are in the unique position of having your unique storyline. Like you're the only one that's experiencing life the way that you're experiencing it, from the people that you meet to the places that you are. So look at so in that sense, every single person's life is so miraculously individual and special. So you have a wealth of things to pour into your art that nobody else has, but people have parallels to it. So you have to find what resonates with other people in a way that you're telling your personal perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it is a matter of channeling who you are and your own experiences into these, into your creations to make them actually resonant, for sure. Cool. Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, and you can choose to like be so far out there that nobody gets it, or you can choose to try to taper it in a way that people get it, but it's up to you. At the end of the day, it's like, if you're happy when you're creating, then you're doing it right.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So with all of this extra time that comes with this time of quarantine, any recent awesome discoveries as far as movies or music or even books?
Man, I watch a lot of Gaia TV now, which I totally recommend. It's like the Netflix for like open-minded individuals.
I've seen it advertised. I've been a little, and they have all sorts of documentaries. They just seem to explode overnight. Like they just launched this channel. There's so much content there.
Yeah, and Joe Dispenza has his own show there too.
Wow.
So, yep. And then there's shows like Teresa Bullard's Mystery Teachings, where she's like a physicist, but she also is spiritual. So she combines quantum physics and spirituality. And it's really like I'm just like, ever since I guess the awakening, I guess that's for lack of a better term, is like all I want to do is just learn new things. I just want to cram as much as I can into my brain and just keep like learning, because the more that you learn, the more you expand your perspective, and the more different ways you can think about the same thing, the more that you can see that same thing, the full picture of that same thing. So this existence of called life, the more you learn about different ways to think about it, the bigger that you can see the entire picture.
Is that just like an app that you can get on Apple TV or something?
Yeah.
All right, I'll get the app.
I'm trying to think of any specifics that I've been into. Tiger King, dude. That was amazing. That was like such a fascinating and disturbing case study. Like not only to watch it, but then also to see how people interpreted it when they watched it. Because like when I watch it, my perspective is like, these are terrible people, and I'm just very interested to see how these people live, because I can't even believe that they exist, Yeah. But then you see other people watch it, and they're like, they start to idolize these people, and they think they're amazing and awesome, and then it's like, okay, well, wasn't expecting that,
Yeah. Yeah, the reactions people have had they've been pretty varied.
Once you start expanding your perspective and stuff, I do like that they sort of paint a sort of dynamic picture of Joe Exotic. Like, people that hurt other people were hurt themselves, and it is a cycle of traumatic abuse, and I think as a society to move forward, we have to start not condoning or being okay with terrible acts, but also try to really start to get in touch with the human element of it, because everything isn't as black and white as it seems, and we all make mistakes, and we all do terrible things, and sometimes it's because terrible things happen to us, but that doesn't make it okay. But if you want to start to understand things on a deeper level, then rather than just writing these people off as like, screw that guy, think about it in a different way. You don't have to agree with what he did, but it's just where I'm at. I like to think of things deeper,
That whole entire show was just 5 hours of watching the most insane, brightly burning train wreck you've ever seen of humanity. I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah. Oh, another good Castlevania on Netflix is like, I love that. It's amazing.
I've
always loved the source material. Yeah, it's really it's funny because it starts painting a picture about like mainly the humans are the bad guys, and then it starts like it brings in like religion, alchemy, all of these different spins on humanity, and it follows mainly the monsters that are dealing with the scourge that is humanity, and it really parallels today, especially once season 3 rolls around. It's like it really starts digging into like, all right, maybe humans are the bad guys.
Yeah, I was curious about that Castlevania show because I grew up on the video games. I loved the video games. I still listen to the music from the games.
Oh, totally, dude. Yeah,
So
Symphony of the
good.
Night was like, that game blew me away. That was I logged so many hours in that game.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
That Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Yeah, I love my old school horror 90s video games. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was totally that was definitely filtered into my aesthetic for sure. That was a big part of my childhood. Horror video games.
Yeah, there were some good ones. Some really, really good. I'm trying to think what else there was. Some Game Boy ones I was into. There was a Frankenstein Game Boy game. There was some company nobody had ever heard of.
Nice.
That was awesome. And he had a girlfriend. And instead of the Bride of Frankenstein, and she was like stitched together, but somehow she got unstitched. She was kind of like Sally in Nightmare Before Christmas. And you have to go around these levels picking up her pieces, and there's like a leg and an arm, and it was cool.
I feel like I'm seeing like, because like movie covers and like video game covers, like I spent tons of time just in video stores staring at covers. And I think a lot of people that grew up that are in our generation did. And so it's like, I think I'm seeing like that Frankie, like maybe had sunglasses or something, like
he's running down a corridor.
Yeah. I see him in like, there's just a little image of him in this position.
That's it. And he's holding like half of a woman. Her name was Bitsy because she was all in bits and pieces.
That's amazing. Yeah, I totally kind of vaguely remember that. And it's funny because those things start to like incorporate into my art and in a fever dream sort of a sense. It's like I barely sort of remember, like, was that real or did I dream that? You know, and it's only until someone else corroborates the fact that it existed that I'm like, oh, I guess that was a thing.
Yeah. It's funny how that stuff is just right there in your subconscious, just waiting for you to unleash it. Yeah. Now I'm checking out Castlevania though, for sure. Did you watch the Dracula BBC special?
No.
Or series? That was good. It's a 3-parter. It's pretty much like 3 movies. It's like 3 episodes. Okay. They're an hour and a half a piece. It's a very cool spin on Dracula. The 3rd episode I was a little not crazy about. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but they make a choice that it kind of made it a little. It was still good. It's still worthwhile. But the first 2 episodes, there's everything you used to love about Hammer movies, but modernized without being throwbacky. Yeah, definitely recommend it.
I'll have to check it out for sure.
Well, cool, man. What else are you working on nowadays? You have another Bizarro Go-Go episode going live last night.
So basically, what I'm doing now is I try to put out an episode of Sputron, my podcast, every week, which is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then in between that, I'm making some kind of episode for Bizarro A Go-Go, which originally it was going to be sort of like a sketch comedy show or anthology where they all kind of bleed together. But since the social distancing hit, we've got to scale it back. And now I'm just making Bizarro A Go-Go Presents, which are like short films about the characters that we can film here in quarantine. Just kind of like flesh out the universe and still produce content. And then while I'm making those, I'm also filming a making of docuseries called Beyond Bizarro A Go-Go, which documents the making of all of these shows and just the fun stories behind it. So that's all available on our YouTube, youtube.com/RanCig.
Wow, it's really cool. And you and Rani are writing, filming, producing, editing all of this yourselves. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And you do all the music too.
Yep. Oh God, I love making just dumb songs.
They're catchy though. Yeah, I found them to be pretty catchy for sure. Cool. Well, awesome. How? What's the best way for people to follow you and your work?
Yeah. So, I'm at Cig Neutron on Instagram and Twitter, and then probably the YouTube, youtube.com/RanCig, CIG. That's where all of our new content, video content's going up. And then we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/RanCig. And that's where I kind of touch on in our videos, the Beyond Bizarro Go-Go that's public. I sort of do quick sped up versions of me making effects and things like that. But on our Patreon, you actually get access to detailed like tutorials step by step. I tell you, this is what I use. This is how I did it. And in addition to that, you get like weird, sexy monster photo shoots. Like Rani poses for these. Every time we do a weird, gross character, we'll do like a funny, sexy photo shoot with it. So you get all of those on our Patreon too.
Her as Danny Trejo made me all kinds of confused.
Yeah.
It was one of the most amazing but uncomfortable things I think I've ever seen.
That was a tough one to just process like visually, but it was amazing. And that's all Rani too. She loves like combining that like sexy element with also like disturbing, and it's just like we're just here to show people the stuff they've never seen before, and really again like shake up I think that's part of the work too. When I mentioned earlier, it's like we have to shake people out of their patterns of thinking and feeling, because once you see something new, it could completely change your outlook on life, and you may not even realize it.
Yeah.
But it's just someone showed you this thing that you had no idea could exist, and you just seen it. That's pretty powerful stuff.
I feel like that's the true purpose of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, and then Twitch. Yeah, I do a lot of live sculpting and stuff on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Cig Neutron. That's
nice.
It's like the main place that you can find me.
Oh, cool. So you have videos of you making the effects and stuff like that, and awesome. We'll check it out.
Yep, and then people can like hang out with me live and talk to me and ask me questions and stuff. And then I take those videos, speed them up, and then put them on forever on the Patreon, because they're only up like usually like when it's live on Twitch. So
nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I feel like I could easily spend another 3 hours talking to you, but I'm sure you're a busy man. But this was a whole lot of fun, so thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, this was a great talk, man. Thanks so much.
All right. Truthfully, I got so much out of this conversation, and I hope you kids at home did as well. You can all follow Cig's work on Instagram, and I highly, highly recommend you do. Seriously, follow him. His work is such a treat, and you're welcome. Big thanks to the amazing Cig Neutron for being here today. You follow Cig's work as well on the TikTok, which I still have not gotten around to figuring out. Don't forget to listen to Cig Neutron Sputron podcast, available everywhere you listen. You can also check out Cig on Patreon at patreon.com/rancig, RANCIG, as well as Twitch at twitch.tv/Cig Neutron. Thanks again for listening to the Nick Taylor Horror Show.